Tonight's true scary story is one of those stories that you do not watch at night. After I read it, it gave me like this lingering feeling of just not good. I feel so bad for this submitter. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my YT channel, where I will be posting the same story that I told last night, but an uncensored version and a longer version of it. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my YT channel and my IG. Both are in my link tree, where I post the same videos on here, different and longer and uncensored version of videos. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my YT and my IG. They're both in my link tree, and I will be posting the same story I posted last night, only an uncensored and much longer version of it. I will be doing that tomorrow night. If you want to send me your true scary story, my link is also in my bio. You can submit your story there. Today's submitter's name is Randy, and she did say that I could tag her, so she will be tagged below. So any comments or questions that you have, drop them in the comments. She lived in Canyonville, Oregon in 2011. Driveway was a mile long, steep dirt road that had cattle everywhere. She lived with her then boyfriend and his sister, and this is the first place that they had gotten together. They were in their early 20s, so this was kind of exciting for them. Now, his sister was only 16 years old. He worked nights, so she spent a lot of time with his sister at night because neither of them worked at night. She said that this trailer always gave her spooky vibes. She didn't like it. Like, it felt cold and weird, and there was also an added room at the end of the trailer that was almost the length of the trailer. It had cement floors, and in the back of the wall, there was a square cutout of the wall. After about a week of living there, creepy things started happening. So they started hearing knocking on the wall, and if you knocked on the wall, whatever it was that was knocking would imitate your knocks every single time. And sometimes they would be sitting in the trailer, and they would all of a sudden hear this growling sound coming through the vents. They also had 2 cats and 1 dog, and apparently the dog would sit at the end of the hallway every single night and just growl for no reason, just stare at the end of the hallway and growl. She would always get up to check to see what this was, and there was nothing there, and this would really freak her out a lot, because can you imagine if one of your animals, especially a dog, was just staring at a corner and growling at it? That would absolutely terrify me. She also said that her boyfriend would disappear a lot, and so a lot of times it would just be her and her sister that would be witnessing things and not him. Why he was disappearing, no idea. So one time in particular, her and his sister are at the house and they're listening to music when all of a sudden her hair starts to slowly stand up, and it's standing up. His sister looks at her with this terrified look on her face, like, what the hell is happening? They're both staring at each other like, oh my God, she's not moving at all. And then all of a sudden her hair falls back down and the music stops and all the electronics in the house just shut down. She said that the only thing that stayed on were the lights. So they were just sitting there staring at each other, absolutely terrified, when all of a sudden the doors of the cupboards just fly open and dishes just start flying out of the cupboard. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she was showering one time. She's standing in the shower, and all of a sudden she feels this gust of wind. When she looks over, and there's this bald man standing next to the shower staring at her. He was about 6'4". His skin looked weathered, like he had been in the sun for way too long. He had dark circles around his eyes. He was wearing a dark sweater and black slacks. And he's just standing there staring at her when the shower curtain wraps around her entire body and she falls out of the shower. He's just standing there. After that, they absolutely refused to take showers alone. Both of the girls started seeing this man everywhere, and especially when they would take showers. So every time they took a shower, they would have to have one another in the room. Then her boyfriend starts experiencing things. The little girl presented herself to her boyfriend and told her boyfriend that they were trapped there in this house because there was a plane crash and there was a man there, a bad man, probably the bald man, who was keeping them there, keeping them trapped there. Now, this little girl started presenting herself to the girls often, and this little girl was she didn't look great. She had long, dark hair that was always in her face. She had dark circles around her eyes, and she was super pale. She was about 8 or 9 years old, and she would always wear a white dress that was kind of ruffled, and she always had a music box with her that had a mirror in it. It was like an old antique music box, and she would carry this around with her everywhere. Now, they always knew when she was going to show herself because they could hear the music box playing before she would present herself. Now, after they would hear this music, they would then hear her running up and down the halls, giggling. She could also run through you and then laugh. Randy said that her first experience with her doing this was incredibly odd because it felt like ice was running through her veins. This part is terrifying. One day, her boyfriend is laying on the couch and he has dark brown eyes. This is important to know. He's arguing with her about something, and while he's arguing with her, all of a sudden his voice starts to change. He starts yelling at her and his voice sounds almost demonic. He then shoots up from his position and he just stares at her and he starts yelling yelling, and his eyes turn this bright green color with this red dot in the middle. Then stops yelling and he just stares at her, and he's intently staring at her with these eyes. And this is super awkward when all of a sudden she goes, "Joseph," and he answers and goes,
"Joseph isn't here right now."
And he just sits back down and acts completely normal. She will never forget that, she said. That scared the daylights out of her. So after everything being absolutely insane for a year, Joseph finally contacts his aunt, which is apparently an empath. And she tells him that that random room that is attached, that has that cement flooring and everything, needs to be covered because it is a portal. Meanwhile, she had never been to the house before, so she had no idea that that room was even there. His aunt also tells them that that bald man is the keeper of all of those souls there. So I was right. Yes, the keeper of all those souls. He's not good. They also found out that the trailer was manufactured in a town in California that did not exist at all. It said right there on the trailer where it was manufactured, and it was not a real place. They also discovered that in the late 1800s that a plane had crashed in that area with no survivors. They ended up just moving out after a year because it just got worse and worse every single day. Do you guys think that this was demonic or a poltergeist, or what do you think this was? Because this sounds demonic to me. This sounds bad, especially the bald man and the little girl. Whenever something presents itself as a little girl, I never believe that it's a little girl. That's just my opinion. But what do you guys think in the comments? Because Randy would love to know what everyone thinks. This was a horrible experience for her. She lived in fear every single day. So she would like to know what you guys think. My name is Kaisa, and I give true scary stories on here every single night. So if you like that, then hit that follow button. And like I said before, if you guys want to send me your true scary story, my email is in my bio. It is kaisaspooky@gmail.com, or you can go to my link tree and submit your story there. Love you guys tons and tons, every single one of you. Thank you so much. Every one of you, I love you. Thank you. I notice all of you that are repeat commenters. You guys are my favorite. Like, I appreciate the comments and the likes and the shares and everything more than you know. And the support and the followers. Like, you guys make my day every single day. I swear to you, you do. There's just one last thing I need you to do for me. And what is that? Have a spooky night. Look.
I asked you all to send me your scariest experiences with Ouija boards, and this one stuck with me. Especially the ending. So the person who sent it in said this happened when they were 14 years old. Their family had just moved to a farm in rural Kentucky, tucked away on 120 acres of secluded land. The house had a bit of a strange past. It once belonged to a man that everyone in town knew as the town thief, a shady guy who, according to local rumors, was into some dark and disturbing stuff. Well, when they arrived to their new home, the upstairs of the house was completely stripped. No carpet, no furniture, no walls separating the rooms, just one vast, hollow wooden floor, empty. Well, almost empty. Right in the middle of the upstairs space was a Ouija board, just sitting there, like it had been waiting. They were raised religious, and they knew better than to mess with that kind of thing, so naturally they brought it downstairs to show their mother. The moment she saw it, she panicked. She told him, "Put that thing in the kitchen sink and burn it now." So he grabbed some matches and tried to light it. When he threw the match onto the board, it flared, but then went out. He tried again, nothing. A third time, still nothing. At that point, even his mother looked unsettled, but what really unnerved him was his stepdad, who was an outspoken atheist, and he just stood there completely speechless. His stepdad finally said, "Give it to me." So they took the board outside to a metal wash tub in the middle of their yard, and his stepdad poured lighter fluid over the entire thing and lit a match. It caught, and for about 30 seconds, flames danced over the board, and then, just like that, the fire died. What's really creepy to me is that only the thin edges of the paper had burned. The board itself, especially the letters, numbers, and the symbols, pretty much remained untouched. So, frustrated and more than a little spooked at this point, his stepfather disappeared into the house and returned with a small container of raw gunpowder. And yes, he poured gunpowder generously all over this board, stepped back 5 feet, and tossed a lit match into the tub. After a big flash and a loud bang, a billow of smoke rose into the air, and when the smoke cleared, they looked inside just to see the board had, in fact, burnt. But every single part with a letter, a number, or a symbol was still intact. Blackened around the edges maybe, but otherwise completely untouched. His stepdad didn't really say much after that. He just handed him a shovel and said, "Bury it somewhere deep." So he did. That was back in 1987. Now it's 2025 and the old farm is gone. The entire 120 acres have been developed into a massive suburban neighborhood, over 200 homes lined up in rows, and somewhere beneath one of those houses, maybe underneath someone's bedroom or kitchen floor. That Ouija board is still there, buried about 4 feet underground and still just waiting.
Si usted es como yo y se quedó en la casa, vamos a hacer una pijamada y te voy a contar solo porque es Halloween, un story time de cuando a mi hermano lo asustaron por mi culpa con un ente. Yo también quiero que usted me diga en los comentarios si es de verdad mi culpa o qué sucedió ahí. Usted tiene una explicación lógica para eso. Le deposito 10,000. Yo sé que no es tanto, pero es honesto. Y escucha la moraleja que hay de toda la historia. A mí me encantaba ver películas de miedo. Amaba, ¿verdad? Todo lo que tuviera que ver con lo místico, paranormal, todo. El tema es que sale la monja. Le digo a mi mamá que la veamos. La situación con la monja es que tenía mucha simbología, tiene mucho ocultismo, que en realidad sí abre portales. Sí, bolita. Vemos la monja. Al final me dice mi mamá, ¿no será que estamos abriendo muchos portales viendo a la monja? No, hombre, ya les habíamos dicho, pasen, desayunen, coman, almuercen. Bueno, ya, la vimos. Se sentía una vibra pesadísima en la casa. Pero Neika igual se va para la casa que teníamos en una montaña y está mi hermano y le digo, veamos la monja. Ya la había visto yo una vez, ya había yo abierto portales, ríos y mares. ¿Para qué una segunda, verdad? Yo soy una necia. Cuando a mí algo se me mete en la cabeza, yo necesito que pase. Yo la quería ver de nuevo porque está muy buena. Bueno, la cosa es que para no casarlos con el cuento, dormimos ese día en el sofá. Una pausa ahí para dramatizar. Ya, pasa. El día siguiente tenemos una cena nosotros y después yo me iba a dormir a la casa de mi mamá. Él se quedaba en esa casa donde teníamos un vecino, o sea, era casa, monte, vecino, básicamente. Para que usted se conecte a un video in, usted tiene que estar dentro de la casa o saberse la contraseña del Wi-Fi. Ok, continuamos. Para que usted se conecte al video in, tiene que estar adentro de la casa, saberse la contraseña del Wi-Fi. Igual, cuando usted enciende un video in, le sale Windows 7, le sale la ventanita, todo. Al menos el video in que teníamos en ese momento. Cuando lo enciende mi hermano, aparte, ok, un súper paréntesis. Mi hermano tiene un perrito que se llama Goofy. Goofy le ladra al aire, a una bacteria, ser viviente, ser no viviente. Cualquier cosa Goofy le va a ladrar. Ese día Goofy entró, se paralizó en la pared. Él estaba viendo lo que estaba pasando. Cuando mi hermano enciende el video in, se ve en la pantalla gigante, se hace detrás de eso, una imagen súper. Había una cruz y salía un padre en chiquitito levantando y bajando la cruz. Dice mi hermano, porque nos llama por videollamadas, que habían testigos que somos nosotros. Creo que hay alguien en la casa. Es lo primero que a él se le ocurrió y que lo estaban distrayendo para... Le decimos, agarre un cuchillo igual que es en la llamada. Yo ya estaba lista con el 911. Se va y dice, no había nadie. Me dice, no, me están asustando. O sea, entonces, apague eso. Estamos de fiesta con Jesús. Apaga, suena y apaga y empieza a sonar eso. Como si estuviéramos en la película de Laro y sale la chiquita. Así. Vuelve a encender el video in, que igual cuando usted lo vuelve a encender, sale Windows 7 reiniciándose para que usted ponga lo que usted quiere ver. Sale otra la imagen, se invierte la cruz, se pone para abajo. Ve ahí, como si la situación no estuviera ya fea. Él no había relacionado lo que estaba pasando a lo que habíamos visto el día anterior. Hasta que a Neika se le ocurre decir, claro, mi ciela, obviamente yo no me iba a quedar callada. ¿No será que eso tiene relación con la película que vimos ayer de la monja? Sí, me pasé. Me pasé porque él no había relacionado, él no había relacionado nada. Y claro, ese hombre se pone blanco. Pero Goofy seguía viendo a la pared. No ladró ni una sola vez cuando Goofy es el perro que se une en una sola voz a cantar al público un grito de gloria, ¿verdad? mi hermano se fue sin camisa, agarró el carro y se vino para donde estábamos mi mamá y yo. Cuando mi hermano está cerrando el portón, él deja la luz del cuarto prendida porque ese hombre salió pero como gas lata. O sea, te quedas vos, problema tuyo, mi ciela. Es que el hombre se va y cuando está saliendo, la luz se apaga sola. El bombillo estaba bien porque al día siguiente funcionó, entonces no fue que el bombillo se quemó. Ahora sí, mi parte favorita. La moraleja, como existe el mal y el mundo espiritual, existe el bien. Son polos opuestos, frío, caliente, es real. Sí existe. ¿Existe Dios? Sí. ¿Existe en la entidad negativa del opuesto que es Dios? También. De hecho, yo les puedo contar la que a mí me pasó. Si me dejan en los comentarios, hay parte 2 de cuando me asustaron a mí, porque ahí pues no lo íbamos a dejar así. O sea, había que ver una revancha de que le pasó a él, me tenía que pasar algo a mí. Las películas abren portales. Todo lo que usted ve, todo lo que usted consume en su celular, en su televisión, abre un portal y va a afectar también su vida diariamente. Ya sea algo bueno, ya sea algo malo, todo lo que usted ve, lo que sus hijos ven, lo que los niños y niñas ven, afecta su crianza, usted afecta su vida día a día, porque de ahí se pueden traspasar muchas energías. Así que esa es la moraleja del día de hoy. Like y comentar si quieren parte 2. Y bueno, me encantó esta pijamada con ustedes. Bye. Besos.
Can we show them the older homestead?
Yeah, let's go. As you know.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
They went to both.
Yeah.
I have another scary story for y'all. This one might scare you whether it's 10 a.m. or 3 a.m. This one was sent to me by one of you guys, and for the sake of keeping her anonymous, we'll call her D. So one night, like 10 years ago, D and her friends decided to get together and catch up. They hadn't seen each other in several years at this point, and they were all on very different life paths. When they were younger, they loved exploring old abandoned houses and buildings out in the woods. So in the group chat, they deemed it was only fitting that they go explore an old abandoned building. They picked one of their old favorite places to go explore. Just to clear up any prejudgment, they weren't under the influence of anything. So this building that they went to has had multiple uses and dates back to the 1800s. It's been a hospital with a morgue, a boarding school for children and adults with disabilities, an asylum for criminally insane people, and a residential home for the elderly. Its history runs deep. So this night they drive 3 hours to get there. By the time they get there, it's already midnight and super dark. This building sits on top of a hill surrounded by woods and a river flowing beside it. The nearest house is a farm, which is like a 45-minute drive away. They park their car on the side of the road and start walking up the path to the top of the hill. They're all giggling and nervous and running on adrenaline. They feel like the high school girls that they once were. The hole in the fence that they used to use is still there, so they climb through it and start approaching the building. It's more beaten up than what they remember, but it had been like 10 years since they'd been there. Their first stop was a water tower. They climbed the stairs to the top to scope out the area, and as far as they could see, nobody was around. They talked about all the memories they'd made there and how one of the friends had even met her husband there. They decided the morgue and the chapel were the last places that they would go because it was quicker to get back to the car from there. So they walked to the main building and they climbed through a broken window. This led to a massive hall with a serving hatch at the end of it. They always assumed it was a dining room because it was just off of the kitchen. The hall was big, empty, cold, and dark, but nothing scary or eventful happened. They explored the building, and apart from a few floors that had fallen in, it was exactly how they remembered it. Aside from one room. This room was in a separate building that had smoke damage everywhere. Walls burnt down, windows smashed, melted plastic. They remembered this is the room that one of their friends had stepped on a piece of wood and had a nail go through his foot, snapped while in his foot, and he had to have surgery to remove the nail. One of Dee's friends explained that she had a very sick feeling coming over her. She couldn't explain what it was, but she just didn't feel right. They carried on, and as they approached the part of the building that they remembered having individual rooms, which they always assumed were bedrooms, something just didn't seem right. It wasn't quite the way they remembered. All of the rooms had been burnt with the doors open. All the furniture was still left inside, but was distorted by the fire. As they walked further down the hallway, there was one room with the door closed. It had a thin window on the door, and they tried to open it, but the door was locked. Now, the last time they had been here, none of the doors were locked, and all the rooms had been fire damaged. As they were looking through the window on this door, the room was made up. It was nice, like as if somebody was sleeping in there. I mean, the bed was made and everything was perfectly intact. It had no fire damage like the rest of the building, but remember, this wasn't like that the last time they were there. Bit of a mental image, this room was 4 floors up. The only access to it was via stairs. Lock on the outside of the door was melted and the door was heavily damaged by the fire. The room was stood still in time. This place was miles away from anywhere. She didn't think that this is a place that a homeless person would go. They walked around some more. Nothing else eventful happened aside from just being confused about that weird room. That was until they approached the morgue, which was a building smaller than the rest. It only had 1 floor and 1 big stained glass window. As you walk in, there's a little hallway with 2 heavy wooden arch doors that were left slightly open, just enough to squeeze through. When they walked in, the air felt thick. There was a refrigerator with some of the trolleys pulled out, which is like where they kept the bodies. Out of all the buildings in this place, this was the only one that looked like it was cleaned regularly. Unlike the other rooms, this one wasn't smashed up. There wasn't trash lining the floors, and there was only a little bit of graffiti. They looked around, stayed for about 15 minutes, and then they turned to leave. As they did that, they heard what sounded like one of the trolleys moving, and they all froze. None of them knew what to do. In that second, the entire world stood silent. He said none of them were even breathing or moving. She remembers reaching for her friend's hand and looking at her, and she just had the most petrified look on her face. They knew the only way out was the 2 heavy wooden doors, and that only one person could go through at a time. They left as fast as they could through the doors, but they made sure to hold hands the entire time. They didn't let go of each other. As they walked towards the main doors to exit, they heard what sounded like a laugh. A deep, long laugh. They ran out the main door far enough away where they wouldn't be seen, but close enough where they could still see the doors. There was nothing. No one. They decided they'd leave, go back to the car, and find a McDonald's for a coffee. But to get back to the car, they had to walk past that building. As they made their way past the building, they could hear the sound of the trolleys moving around erratically and what sounded like somebody mumbling to themselves. They walked fast but didn't run in case it brought attention to themselves. They didn't know what was in there, but they knew it wasn't a person because they had just been in there and not a soul was in there. As they get further away from the building, they stop and look back, and in that big stained glass window, they seen a bright light shining. When they were in there, the only lights that were on were their 4 lights. They watched shadows moving around behind the light for a few seconds, and then they left. As they made their way closer to the car, they heard what sounded like a woman quietly crying. They looked around but couldn't see anyone. By this time, it was like 3:45 a.m. As they walked, it seemed like they were getting closer to the crying, but nobody was around. At one point, the crying stopped. The silence was deafening. No wind, no bugs, no animals, no birds crying, nothing. They got to the gap in the fence knowing that they'd have about a 25-minute walk through the woods till they made it to their car. While they'd done this walk many times before, they had never felt like this. They had explored this place so many times and had never experienced anything, day or night. As they walked through the woods, the world came back to life. The wind, the animals, the insects, and the crying. Only now, the crying sounded like it was moving, and fast, with the sound of rustling. This was a cold winter, so the ground was frozen. The movement sounded like it had slowed to a walking pace, almost parallel. They started walking faster, and the sound of the crying and walking got faster too. Made sure that their phones were 100% charged before they got out of the car. The 0 cell service. They knew they weren't too far from the car whenever all of a sudden all 4 of their phones died, which means all of their lights went out, even though they knew that they had all charged their phones. They continued walking back to the car, but it felt like it took forever. At some point, the crying and rustling stopped. They were so freaked out they couldn't really remember when it stopped. They all kept trying to turn their phones back on, but they weren't coming back on. So they finally made it back to where they had left the car, and the car wasn't there. Which makes no sense because they knew the road and they knew where they had left the car. So they walked down the road some and they still couldn't find the car, so they decided to turn around and walk back, and the car was there where they thought they had left it originally, where it just wasn't at, you know? They ran to get in the car when they noticed something that wasn't there before. A baby's car seat was left laying on the ground beside the driver's door, identical to the seat that my friend used for her 8-month-old at the time, one she had took out of the car back at her house. So identical, it had the same soft plushy toy attached to the bar. They jumped in the car and locked the doors. Right as they started the engine, they heard a woman screaming, crying, "My baby, my baby, my baby, you took my baby." And as they pulled away, there was a woman standing there on the corner watching them. Their friend who was driving sped up and didn't stop. They made it on the highway and stopped at the next gas station. They all just needed a breather, so they went in and got a coffee. At this point, it was 6:10 a.m. That 25-minute walk through the woods really took a lot longer than 25 minutes. We're all still just trying to process what just happened when a group of people walked in handing out flyers for a missing woman and baby. The woman they had saw had a striking resemblance to the woman in this picture, but they couldn't be sure. The sun was coming up and they were all really confused, not to mention terrified and traumatized. 7 weeks later, it was still on all of their minds. They started searching social media to see if they could find any posts about this missing woman and baby. One post sent Dee down a rabbit hole. There was a lady that looked like her friend that had an 8-month-old little boy. The woman who was missing had lost her mom 3 days before giving birth and was suffering from postpartum psychosis. Her body and her baby were found 2 days after their visit at the same woods around the same building. She had taken her own life, but her baby was found living and he was fine. He was safe. He was found just past where they had seen the lady standing in the road. They've carried guilt and shame all of these years for not helping in the situation. All they know is whatever happened in the morgue is something that they still can't explain. Was it the same woman following them? Was she the person they seen on the road? Where did their car go when it went missing? How did the baby car seat just magically appear? There's a lot of questions they think that they may never have the answers to. If you listened all the way to the end of this video, drop a comment. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share, you can send it to me here or to my email at alleyshadesworld@gmail.com. Let me know what you think about this one. I've loved reading all y'all's stories. So many more to share, so stay tuned.
All right, so now you guys are scaring me. You guys are freaking me out. The other day I posted this video and you guys said that you heard a voice behind me. I had to go back and listen to this over and over, and I'm not hearing it, but you guys are, because these are the comments that you left behind. This is at about 4 minutes and 1 second. I'm going to leave it pinned so that you can listen to it for yourself and see if you hear anything. So I'm describing or recounting the story from when I was a kid, when my cousin saw something weird in the house. And as I get to about the 4 minute and 1 second mark, you guys are saying that that's where you hear a sound from within the room that says, "Hey." My wife described it that way. I couldn't hear the way you guys described it, but you said it was a whisper. Now, someone else said that they heard it several times, that they heard several voices. They thought it was that someone was in the room with me. Guys, I was in my hotel room by myself. I'm traveling by myself. There was no one with me. I thought that maybe it was mic interference, maybe a little bit of distortion, but no, you guys are like, hell no, it's not distortion. It's a voice. I played it for my wife because I'm still not hearing it. Okay. I played it for my wife, and right at that mark, between 4 minutes and 1 and 4 minutes and 3 seconds, she says she hears it, quote, plain as day. I'm like, plain as day? I can't even make out a whisper. She didn't say you can hear it if you listen real closely. You can hear it if you really pay attention. No, she said you can hear it clear as day. You guys are freaking me out. Go listen to it. See if you hear it.
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
Creepy story time. So the person who submitted this wishes to remain anonymous. I suggest that you stay until the end. Let's call her Elizabeth. Elizabeth has always been sensitive to spirits, but this is a story that really hit her. Around the time her stepfather passed away, she was living at home. She helped a lot in his care, and as his passing got closer and closer, she noticed a lot more activity in the house. One night as she's sleeping, she gets woken up at 3 a.m. She has this overwhelming feeling that there's someone in the room with her. She turned around and could feel them walking around her room and putting their face right next to hers. After this, she started having sleep paralysis, and a black figure would always appear at the foot of her bed. And just as she was getting close to being able to see the face of this thing, she would snap out of her sleep paralysis. Then the week before her stepfather passed away, it was just her and her boyfriend at home with him. Her stepfather was sleeping. Her mom had taken off at about 7 p.m. to go grocery shopping. They had a monitor set up in his room so they could hear him breathing, sleeping, or moving around. Elizabeth started to hear a bell ringing. At first she thought it was her boyfriend just messing with her, so she told him to stop.
He was very adamant that it was not him. Her boyfriend is not a believer at all, but he was also able to hear the bell. Then Elizabeth realizes that the bell noise is actually coming from her stepfather's room, even though there's no bell in there with him. As she listened to the monitor, she realized that she could no longer hear her stepfather breathing, so she rushed to the room to check up on him. The minute she rushes into the room and she opens the door, she sees this black figure bent over on top of her stepfather. The minute she walks in, this figure then looks at her and stares right at her. Here, she froze and closed the door. Her stepfather went back to breathing, so when Elizabeth opened the door the second time, the figure was no longer in there with him. Both her and her boyfriend were freaked out for the rest of the night. They could not explain why her stepfather stopped breathing randomly, where this figure came from, and how were they able to hear the sound of a bell. Then Elizabeth remembered that her stepfather actually used to have a bell in his room that he would use whenever he needed help. This bell had been out of his room for over a year now, and it had been sitting in the bathroom cabinet. Elizabeth believes that this dark figure was coming to take him, and the bell ringing was her stepfather's way of trying to alert her mom, since her mom wasn't in the room with him and he wasn't ready to go. Even though when Elizabeth encountered this figure it felt dark, I truly believe that her stepfather is in a much better place now.